They called from Greenwood Medical Center while I was in the middle of a client meeting. Unknown number. I almost let it ring out until something told me to pick up. This is Nurse Dana Morgan. We have a little girl here named Ava. She says you're her mother. My world stopped. Ava was supposed to be watching cartoons at home with my mother, Stephanie, popcorn, blankets, a quiet day. Instead, she'd been left alone on a cold bench at the hospital where I was born. Left, like luggage, like she didn't matter. Nurse Dana said an elderly woman sat her down, told her I'd come soon, and walked away. For 2 hours, my 5-year-old daughter waited, cried, shivered. And when I saw her, hugging her stuffed elephant like it was her last lifeline, I knew something inside me had just broken, and it wasn't going to be fixed with an apology. I used to tell myself my mother loved us in her own way. That the guilt she laid on my shoulders was just her version of care. But the older I got, the more I realized that Stephanie Walker didn't nurture, she managed, especially when it came to me and my younger brother Jason. Jason was the golden child. He could fail upward, crash every plan he started, waste every chance, and still be praised for trying. Meanwhile, I was the one who worked 3 jobs to help pay the mortgage during Dad's illness. I was the one who made honor roll, kept curfews, raised my daughter alone. But somehow, I was always the cold one, the ungrateful daughter, the one who, in her words, forgot where she came from. Ever since I became a single mom, she made it clear, I owed her, for my childhood, for the roof over my head, for simply existing. You think you got here on your own? She'd snap when I tried to set boundaries. Everything you have I built. What she really meant was, everything you have, I control. Jason, of course, never heard those words. When he dropped out of college the second time, she said he was finding himself. When his business failed, she said it wasn't his fault. The market was cruel. But when I declined to co-sign another loan for him this time, for a house he wanted to impress a girlfriend, suddenly I was selfish, cold, calculated. She showed up at my place that Sunday, unannounced, holding a lemon pie like it was a peace offering. Ava was playing in the backyard, giggling as she blew soap bubbles into the wind. I thought maybe my mother had come to reconnect. Silly me. Melanie, she said, setting the pie on the counter like we were hosting brunch. Your brother's in love. This is the real thing. He just needs a small boost. I've already helped him, Mom, I said carefully, trying not to raise my voice. Twice. He didn't pay me back. I'm not putting my credit on the line again. That's when her smile fell away like a mask that had cracked. So that's it? After all I've done for you, this is the thanks I get? The next hour was a greatest hits compilation of emotional blackmail. Stories from my childhood twisted into debt. Sacrifices she claimed as receipts. Comparisons to other daughters who never say no to their mothers. Ava came in at one point, holding her doll, looking at Stephanie in confusion. Why is Grandma crying? She whispered. Grandma's just tired, honey, I said, brushing her hair gently. She'll be leaving soon. But she didn't leave. Not right away. She stayed long enough to say one final thing that chilled me more than I understood at the time. You'll regret this, Melanie. Not today, but you will. At the time, I thought she meant another round of silent treatment, maybe some passive-aggressive phone calls. I never imagined it meant she'd take my daughter and leave her behind. The tension in the house after that Sunday felt thick, like something invisible had settled into the walls. My mother stopped calling. No. Good morning, sweetheart. No check-ins. And Ava, who had grown used to spending weekends with Grandma, started asking questions. Is Grandma mad at me? She asked while coloring one afternoon. No, baby. I lied. Adults just need space sometimes. The truth was, I didn't know how to explain the war my mother had declared. It was silent, but it was real, a cold withdrawal of affection, a refusal to see Ava, a quiet punishment for my defiance. Jason called once, fuming. Do you have any idea what you've done? He snapped. Mom hasn't eaten in days. She's sick with stress. I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. Maybe she should talk to someone about boundaries. She doesn't need therapy, Mel. She needs her daughter to stop treating her like a stranger. No, she needed her daughter to be obedient. Then, Tuesday came. It started like any other day. I packed Ava's snack bag, kissed her forehead, and made her pancakes shaped like stars her favorite. We danced a little to the music playing on my phone while I brewed coffee. It was peaceful. At 9:00 a.m., the doorbell rang. It was my mother. She stood there as if the past weeks of silence had never happened, dressed in her favorite burgundy scarf, holding a tote bag with Ava's name embroidered on the side. "I thought I'd take her today," she said cheerfully. "Just the two of us. It's been too long." I hesitated. Every instinct in me said something wasn't right. But Ava's eyes lit up, and she gasped. "Really, Grandma? Just us?" I looked at my daughter, then back at my mother, who smiled too easily. "Fine," I said, masking the knot in my stomach. "Back by 5." She kissed my cheek lightly, too lightly, and left with Ava skipping beside her, holding her hand. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I poured myself a second cup of coffee and tried to focus on my work. Meetings passed, emails piled up, hours blurred. And then, at exactly 3:07 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I normally let those go to voicemail. But something, a breath, a twitch in the gut told me to answer. "Hello. Is this Ms. Melanie Walker?" "Yes." "This is Nurse Dana Morgan, calling from Greenwood Medical Center. We have a little girl here. She says her name is Ava." My body froze. There must be a mistake. My daughter is with her grandmother. Silence. "Ma'am," the nurse said gently. "The girl has been here alone for over 2 hours. An elderly woman brought her in, sat her on a bench in the main lobby, told her you'd be arriving soon, and then she left. I didn't even grab my coat. I left everything on the desk and ran. Drove through red lights, barely breathing. And when I got there was Ava. Alone? Sitting on that cold plastic bench, clutching her stuffed elephant, eyes swollen and pink. When she saw me, she didn't run, she didn't speak, she just whispered, "Mommy, why didn't Grandma come back?" And for the first time in my life, I didn't have an answer. I dropped to my knees in front of her. Ava looked so small, her cheeks streaked with dried tears, the sleeves of her jacket pulled over her hands like she was trying to disappear inside herself. She didn't even reach for me at first. It took a few seconds before her arms crept up, unsure, and wrapped around my neck. And then she sobbed. Nurse Dana came over, her face lined with concern, and something else, something like restrained anger. "Ms. Walker," she said gently, "we need to talk." She led me into a small consultation room, past the main lobby where Ava had been waiting. I kept Ava in my lap, clutching her like the truth might blow her away. "What happened today," Nurse Dana said slowly, "was not normal." She explained how an elderly woman-me mother had arrived at 1:05 p.m., holding Ava's hand, carrying her tote bag and a pink lunchbox. She walked her into the hospital, sat her on a bench just outside the admissions wing, and said clearly, "Your mommy will be here soon. Just wait right here." "And then?" I asked. She walked away, out the front door. No hesitation, no paperwork, no question at the desk. Just gone. I blinked, stunned. "You're sure she didn't go to an appointment?" "We checked the logs. She had no appointment. She didn't check in anywhere." "But maybe she—" "Miss Walker," Dana interrupted gently. "I've worked here for 20 years. I remember your mother. She delivered you Hera 34 years ago. I was a new assistant back then. And the moment I saw her walk away today, I remembered her face." I looked down at Ava, whose thumb was tucked inside her mouth, now something she hadn't done since she was 3. Regression, they called it. A symptom of trauma. Nurse Dana continued. "When I realized she wasn't coming back, I pulled the security footage." She opened her tablet and played the video. There was my mother, holding Ava's hand, smiling faintly, kneeling to speak to her, pointing to the bench. Then walking away, shoulders squared, No glance backward. She didn't even hesitate. I whispered. No, Dana said. And when Ava began to cry, we tried to comfort her, but she kept asking, "Is Grandma still in the building?" She waited, Ms. Walker, for 2 hours. That's when the first crack formed inside Menno, just in my heart, but deeper. Something old and buried. A question I had never dared ask before. What kind of woman raises her daughter to believe that love is something you must earn? Because what my mother did today wasn't just irresponsible, it was deliberate. A message. When we got home that night, Ava refused to sleep alone. She crawled into my bed, clutching my shirt in her small hand. I held her until her breath slowed. Then I stepped out of the room and called my mother. She picked up on the first ring. "I hope," she said calmly, "you've had time to reflect." I couldn't breathe. "You left a 5-year-old alone in a public hospital." "She was safe. It was a hospital. I knew they'd call you. I just needed you to understand what it feels like when someone turns their back on family." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Mom, she's a child." "Exactly," she said. "A part of this family, just like Jason. And you made a choice." That night, as I watched my daughter sleep with tear marks on her cheeks, I made a choice too. The next morning, my phone didn't stop ringing. First, it was Jason. "Are you serious right now?" he snapped. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. Mom told me Ava wandered off while she was at a checkup. That's all it was." I nearly dropped the phone. "She left her, Jason, on a bench, alone, and walked away. She was coming right back." "No," I said coldly. "She never intended to. I saw the footage. She went straight out the door." Jason fell silent for a second before his voice turned sour. "Maybe she just needed a minute. Maybe if you weren't so heartless." I hung up. It didn't stop there. By noon, Aunt Laura called. Then Uncle Frank. Even a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in months left a voicemail saying, "You know, Melanie, grandmothers make mistakes. That doesn't make them evil." But no one asked about Ava. No one asked how she slept. No one asked why a child who used to dance barefoot in the living room now followed me from room to room like a shadow, clinging to my leg like a toddler. They all wanted to protect the illusion of my mother, the martyr, the wounded matriarch, the woman who had given up everything for her children. Even now, they were more concerned about her reputation than the 5-year-old girl she traumatized. So I took Ava to a child psychologist. Dr. Elise Monroe was warm and soft-spoken, but beneath her kindness was a clarity that I found disarming. She saw straight through the cracks. After 3 sessions with Ava, she asked to speak with me privately. "She's exhibiting classic signs of abandonment trauma," Elise said gently. "Separation, anxiety, emotional regression, sleep disruption." I nodded, feeling that now familiar tightness in my throat. "This isn't a misunderstanding, Ms. Walker. This was an intentional act. She believes someone important in her life left her behind, and she doesn't know why." I closed my eyes. She keeps asking if she did something wrong. Elise reached across the desk, not to touch me, just to let her presence land. "This isn't about guilt, Melanie. It's about protection. If this woman had been anyone but your mother, we wouldn't be having a philosophical debate. We'd be talking about legal consequences." I left with a manila envelope. Inside was Elise's full psychological evaluation of Ava, complete, with words that made my skin crawl. Child endangerment, emotional abuse, coercive neglect. I sat in my car, parked outside the clinic, hands gripping the wheel, knuckles white. And I made a second call. Not to my mother. Not to Jason. To a lawyer. Rachel Hughes answered on the second ring. I told her everything, from the Sunday pie to the hospital bench. From the video footage to the cold phone call where my mother spoke about my daughter like she was a chess piece. "Can I do anything?" I asked. Rachel was quiet for a beat. Then she said, "We're not talking about hurt feelings here, Ms. Walker. We're talking about a criminal act. And yes, you can do something." I stared through the windshield at a world that suddenly felt foreign. "Good," I whispered, "because I'm done playing daughter. It's time I become a mother." It was 3 days after Ava's therapy report landed on my kitchen table that my mother showed up at my office. The receptionist's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ms. Walker. There's a woman here. She says she's your mother. She's emotional." I stared at the buzzer for a full 10 seconds before pressing the door release. When I stepped into the lobby, Stephanie Walker was sitting on the edge of the leather couch like she was auditioning for sympathy, dressed in black. Makeup smudged just enough to suggest crying, a white handkerchief trembling in her hand. She stood as I entered. "Melanie," she said softly, "we need to fix this. The family is falling apart." I didn't sit. "There's nothing to fix," I said. "You abandoned my daughter. You traumatized her." Her lip quivered. "You always twist things. She was never in danger. It was a hospital. I knew they would call you. She paused, as if hunting for the right words. "Wanted to give you a wake-up call. A little scare. That's all." I blinked. "You scared a 5-year-old. Not me, her. She cried for 2 hours." "She won't even remember this in a few months," my mother said quickly. "Children bounce back. You're being dramatic." "No," I said. "You're being dangerous." Her expression shifted. The trembling lip vanished. The soft voice hardened. "Fine," she snapped. "If this is how you want it, then don't expect me to come running when you need help. Don't expect me to babysit when you're sick. Don't expect anything." There it was. The final thread pulled loose. "You've decided I'm the villain," she continued, her voice rising now. "Then I'll play the part." I folded my arms, finally steady. "You already have," she scoffed. "Ungrateful. That's what you are. I carried you. I raised you. I gave you everything." "You gave me conditions," I corrected. "Love with a price tag. Affection only if I obeyed." Her face flushed. "I was trying to teach you respect." "No," I said calmly. "You were trying to maintain control." She grabbed her purse like she meant to slam it down but thought better of it. Instead, she straightened up and walked past me toward the door. Just before she reached it, she turned one last time. "You think this makes you noble? Turning your daughter against her own grandmother? You'll regret this." I didn't flinch. She's not the one who should regret anything. That night, Ava didn't cry. She curled up in my lap after dinner and asked if we could read her favorite book. Halfway through, she looked up and whispered, "You'll always come back for me, right?" I kissed her forehead. "Always," I said. "No matter what." The next morning, I met with attorney Rachel Hughes in her office. I handed her the envelope with Dr. Monroe's report. I shared the security footage, the voicemail from Jason, the cold words my mother had spoken over the phone. I handed her every thread of truth I had. Rachel took it all, laid it out carefully, and said, "This is enough. We'll move forward." And just like that, I stopped being the daughter Stephanie Walker could control. I became the woman who would protect her child at any cost. Filing the lawsuit was terrifying. Not because I doubted what my mother did, but because of what I knew would come next. Attorney Rachel Hughes submitted the complaint 2 days later. Endangerment of a minor, intentional emotional harm, and temporary abandonment of a child. Accompanying the charges was a civil suit for damages, including the cost of Ava's therapy. Stephanie was served on a Thursday. By Friday, my phone lit up with chaos. Jason was first, again. "What the hell, Melanie?" he barked through the speaker. "You're putting Mom through legal hell over a misunderstanding?" "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Jason. You've seen the report. You've seen the footage." "No, I haven't," he snapped. "Because I don't need to. I know Mom. She would never abandon her granddaughter." "She already did," I said quietly. "And you're just angry I'm not sweeping it under the rug this time." He hung up without another word. Then came the silence. Relatives who used to share photos of Ava on Facebook deleted their posts. Holiday invitations vanished. Text threads went quiet. My cousin Rachel messaged to say she was staying neutral, which of course meant she'd already taken a side. But every time I looked at my daughter, clinging to me in her sleep, afraid to be out of sight for more than a minute, I knew I couldn't stop. I wasn't fighting for revenge. I was fighting for peace, for safety, for the right to raise my daughter in a world where love wasn't a weapon. The trial was set for 8 weeks later. In the meantime, Rachel Hughes helped me get a temporary no-contact order. Stephanie was legally barred from seeing or contacting Ava, not even through Jason. That's when the letters started arriving. Handwritten notes slipped under my door, cards with Ava's name scrawled in cursive, sometimes with glitter stickers, sometimes with pressed flowers taped inside. But always the same message. I love you. I'm sorry you're confused. One day you'll understand. They were never addressed to me. Always to Ava. Always manipulative. I gave them all to my attorney. Dr. Monroe, Ava's therapist, increased the frequency of sessions. Ava was getting better slowly. The nightmares didn't come every night anymore. She was laughing again, coloring pictures of unicorns instead of broken hearts. But she still asked about her grandmother. "What did I do wrong, Mommy?" she whispered one night, curled up on the couch. "Nothing," I said firmly, kneeling in front of her. "You didn't do anything wrong. Adults sometimes make choices that have nothing to do with kids. This was never your fault." She blinked at me, her eyes big and brown and tired. "But Grandma said I had to be brave." I bit the inside of my cheek. Being brave doesn't mean being left alone, sweetheart. It means knowing when to say, "That's not okay." She nodded slowly, "Like you did." I hugged her tight. Yes, like I did. That night, I stayed up late with Rachel Hughes on a Zoom call. We organized evidence video timestamps, printed transcripts, clinical notes. I stared at the file in front of me. It was thick, heavy. A record of everything I had once tried to deny. I wasn't just filing a case. I was closing a chapter. And preparing for a fight that would define the next one. The courthouse smelled like dust and cold metal. I wore gray. Not black, not beige gray. The color of neutral, of tired resolve. Ava stayed home with a sitter. She wasn't required to appear. Dr. Elise Monroe would speak on her behalf. I had Rachel Hughes at my side, calm, sharp, ready. My mother, on the other hand, made an entrance. She walked in slowly, using a cane I had never seen before. Her makeup was pale, her hair pinned back in a modest bun. A cardigan hugged her frame like she'd borrowed it from a church thrift store. Beside her sat Jason, lips tight, arms crossed, already glaring at me. She was performing. The image was clear. Frail grandmother. Devoted. Misunderstood. Her lawyer was a silver-haired man in an expensive blue suit. He stood as the judge entered and began spinning the same narrative my family had whispered for weeks. A kind-hearted grandmother took her granddaughter for a visit. A small mix-up. A misunderstood moment. A loving elder now being dragged through court by her bitter daughter. I watched it unfold without blinking. Then it was our turn. Nurse Dana Morgan testified first. Calm, precise, professional. She arrived at 1:05 p.m. with the child. Told her, and I quote, "Your mommy will be here soon, just wait right here." Then she left the building. We assumed she'd gone to admissions. After an hour, when the girl began crying, I approached her. She told me her grandmother had left her there. Stephanie's lawyer tried to discredit her. "Nurse Morgan, is it possible you misheard? You must have been tending to multiple patients?" "I was less than 3 meters away," Dana replied crisply. I heard her words, and we reviewed the hospital's security cameras. They confirm her actions. Next came the footage. Silence filled the courtroom as the video played. Stephanie walking Ava through the lobby, smiling faintly, kneeling, pointing to the bench, speaking to her, standing, turning, walking out. No hesitation. No glance back. No emergency room, no check-in, no confusion. Just exit. The defense scrambled, tried to pivot. Stephanie had a medical emergency, they said. She had intended to return but lost track of time. Then Rachel played the voicemail. My mother's voice. "I just needed you to understand what happens when you turn your back on your family." Next, Dr. Elise Monroe took the stand. She presented Ava's regression, anxiety, nightmares. She spoke in clear, unshakable terms. This was not a simple separation. The child perceived it as abandonment by a trusted figure. The psychological impact is measurable and ongoing. Stephanie's lawyer tried again. But Dr. Monroe, surely 2 hours can't cause lasting damage. For a 5-year-old, she said firmly, 2 hours in an unfamiliar place, with no explanation, no reassurance, and no caregiver present us an eternity. It is trauma. When it was Stephanie's turn to testify, she shuffled to the stand with exaggerated care. I love my granddaughter more than anything, she said in a tremulous voice. I made a mistake. I didn't think it would be so long. I thought Melanie would understand. Rachel rose for cross-examination. Mrs. Walker, you didn't go to a medical appointment that day, did you? I thought I had one? Hospital records show you had no appointment. I must have been confused. And in your recorded message to your daughter, you said this was punishment. Do you remember that? I was emotional. I didn't mean it that way. Rachel leaned in, measured and cold. You used a child to teach your adult daughter a lesson. Do you believe that's love? My mother stared at her, then at me. And I saw it just for a second, the cracks in the mask, the pride she'd worn like armor all my life breaking under the weight of evidence. The judge was a tall woman with silver streaks in her hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She sat silently as closing statements were made. Then, she looked at my mother, expression unreadable. After reviewing all testimony, evidence, and professional evaluations, this court finds that Miss Stephanie Walker did, with intent, abandon a minor in a public place as an act of emotional retaliation toward the child's parent. Stephanie shifted in her seat, eyes wide. This behavior constitutes emotional harm, endangerment of a child, and calculated psychological manipulation. The room went still. And so, this court concludes. The judge paused, then said 5 words that will stay with me for the rest of my life. You do not deserve grandmotherhood. I heard Jason gasp beside her. Stephanie's face froze, color drained, her hands trembled. The judge continued. A permanent restraining order is hereby issued. You are to have no contact with the minor. Additionally, you will pay restitution to cover psychological care costs totaling 50,000. My mother stood suddenly. Your Honor, please, she's my granddaughter. The judge didn't even flinch. Love is not a license to harm, Mrs. Walker. Your rights ended the moment you chose to use a child as a weapon. And just like that, it was over. The day after the trial, Ava woke up in her own bed for the first time in weeks. No nightmares. No screaming. Just a quiet, sleepy, "Good morning, Mommy," followed by a smile I hadn't seen in what felt like forever. That smile was my verdict. Not the judge's voice in the courtroom, not the stack of legal documents. It was Ava's calm, untroubled face that told me, I did the right thing. Of course, not everyone saw it that way. Jason texted once more. Hope you're happy. You just destroyed our family. I didn't reply. Because he was wrong. I didn't destroy our family. I stopped the cycle. I refused to let love be defined by guilt, silence, or fear. And for once in my life, I didn't bend to make peace. I stood, even when it meant standing alone. My mother tried reaching out through second cousins, through letters mailed to my office, through voice messages left in trembling tones. I miss Ava. She must miss me. Please don't let her grow up thinking I didn't love her. But the truth is, she never loved Ava in the way a child deserves to be loved. She loved the idea of being a grandmother, of being admired, praised, needed. She loved control, appearances, the social image of generational closeness, but real love? Love that listens, protects, and never walks away? That was never her currency. Ava asked about her again, about a month after the trial. We were in the park. She was on the swing, legs kicking toward the sun. Mommy, she called, is Grandma still mad? I steadied the swing, met her eyes. No, I said softly. Grandma made a bad choice. And when grown-ups make choices that hurt kids, they don't get to keep being in charge. That's not mad. That's fair. She nodded. Okay, she said. I like fair. Later that night, she drew a picture of the two of us standing in front of a house made of purple hearts. At the top, in big, uneven letters, she wrote, "Me and Mommy, we stay." I kept that drawing, framed it. Because someday, when she's old enough to ask more complex questions about loyalty, family, forgiveness, I want her to see that drawing. To remember that even at 5, she understood the one thing that really matters. We stay. Not for tradition. Not for guilt. But for love, the kind that doesn't leave a child crying on a bench. Dr. Monroe said Ava's healing would be steady, but slow. There'd be moments, years later, where the fear might come back in subtle waist trust issues, anxieties. But the way I responded now, the safety I built now, would define how strong she grew. So I built it. With therapy appointments, with Sunday pancakes, with story time, with patience when she clung too tightly and praise when she dared to let go, and with silence. Because sometimes, strength isn't in what you say, it's in what you don't let back in. As for me, people ask if I regret it. Suing my own mother, cutting ties, drawing a line that will never be crossed again. But when I look at Ava, sleeping peacefully in her room, breathing slow and deep like the world can no longer hurt her, I don't feel regret. I feel legacy. I was not raised with unconditional love. But I am raising it now,